Studies show that people subconsciously adopt the behavior, thoughts, beliefs and internal responses to that of fictional characters as if they were their own. What fictional character have you found yourself imitating subconsciously? Hello. Welcome to I Love Reading, a channel about interesting book-related subreddit topics. If you love our content, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. Note: books mentioned throughout this video can be accessed through the links below. Oh, and if you're not a member of Audible, which by far is the biggest audiobooks online store, pause the video, head over to the description box, click on the link provided, and choose any audiobook that will be mentioned, plus 2 other Audible originals from a collection of more than 200,000 audiobooks. Completely for free. Now let's get started. Psychologists have discovered that while reading a book or story, people are prone to subconsciously adopt their behavior, thoughts, beliefs and internal responses to that of fictional characters as if they were their own. Apparently, it's called experience taking. What characteristic of a fictional character do you think you have inadvertently made your own? When I was quite young, I read The Diary of Anne Frank, after which I carved out a little area in my closet, propped up some pillows, and would hide out in my little haven with a flashlight and my journal. Yep. I also used to emulate Harriet the Spy. I had a notebook with all my observations in it. But I lived on a farm, so I'd just go out walking amongst the cows rather than peeping on my neighbors. I used to be Harriet the Spy too. I would spy on my neighbors and wish I had a raincoat. Could never handle mayo and tomato sandwiches. I wanted to be Matilda too. I could never manage to move anything with my mind though. I have spent a considerable amount of time trying to be Matilda, also trying to get my hands to ignite like the lady in Hellboy. I figure if I can just will my hand particles to get excited enough, it could happen. Oh man. I must have filled a million notebooks playing Harriet the Spy. I'd wander around my neighborhoods looking for mysteries and probably annoying my neighbors by running through their yards. Fun times. I love that. There was definitely an element of adrenaline associated with her. Always on the prowl. I imitated Anne Frank too after I read the book. I bought a journal and wrote in it. I even started every entry with "Dear Kitty." I stopped because I had the not-so-irrational fear that someone would read it. Personally, I've had several experiences. Looking back at it now, reading Divergent made me kind of a masochistic person, Baruch Cormorant made me care about economics and power, Taylor Hebert made me diligent, at least try to be, and all those middle-grade books I read as a child made me an idealistic person and empathetic person. Those are just the ones that I can think of top of my head, but there are more. This is also true for movies and TV shows. Can confirm. I became Zac Efron in that movie about Ted Bundy for a while there. Glad that's over. I find it true for characters I perceive as hard-working. If I'm reading something with a character possessing a go-get-them attitude, I find I get a motivation boost in my day-to-day life as well. For that reason, I like to mix in quick-read motivational books every now and again. I took on Mark Harmon's Gibbs from NCIS and Emily Deschanel's Brenner from Bones for a while in my early 20s. I shamelessly felt myself become Lorelai Gilmore more a month or two when I was younger. My mom and I did the same. LOL, sans all the junk food. This is not so much subconscious as I very consciously took the worldview of Granny Weatherwax from Terry Pratchett's Discworld series and applied it to my life. So, there's this book called The Trick Is to Keep Breathing by Janice Galloway, and it's basically about this woman's descent into madness, along with messed up formatting in the book and a fragmented writing style. We'll probably never read it again. Also, I don't read Dexter anymore. Not that I kill people, but like edgelord you know. Anytime I watch Firefly or Serenity, I end up talking like a Gorum fool for weeks. Try The Expanse and learn some Belter, too mang. Tu sa sa lang belta? Sa sa. I don't think I ever laughed quite as hard watching TV as I did when, whatever his name was, saw that lesbian scene and went, "I'll be in my bunk." Whenever I see that, I say that about every 10th sentence for a week or so. I've totally observed this in myself. I feel like personality is often just us adopting certain characteristics of others. Not just from fictional characters, but from family and friends. For example, when we read about a hero and we want to be like a hero, it makes sense that we'd adopt or emulate those characteristics of a hero. Can you link the studies? I'd love to read them. As far as who I've seen resembled in myself. Jeffrey Lebowski, Gene Valjean. Tyrion Lannister. I'm hip deep in political machinations at work, and I find myself thinking like him. It's weird. Sounds interesting. Can you explain? I found that I got this way after Shmbun. Same idea, one of the main characters was very political, as is most of the environment at the time. Honestly, it taught me workplace politics, which I simply did not understand before that. Not a book, but I love me a bit of Niles Crane. Without the neurosis, though. Is Niles even really Niles without the neurosis? Good point. Holden Caulfield, in Catcher in the Rye. I identified with him and copied him, out of a desire to be like him. Check out this phony. Very clever. It took me a while to get it. To Holden, practically everyone was a phony. Thanks for facilitating a eureka moment. I was thinking of Holden for myself as well. Though I did read that book when I was a teen, so it's difficult to tell if my cynicism was brought on by that character or puberty. I wonder how much better the world would be if high school teachers stopped assigning teens super depressing and angsty books. I had to force my teacher to let me read a different depression book instead of In Cold Blood. Because reading an accurate portrayal of a real murder in which the author was in love with the murderers at that time of my life would likely have killed me. Also, too many people seem to feel like Holden is a character to look up to. I've adopted several things from Dune. Some, without even remembering the source. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, which I recently googled because I couldn't remember the origin of. For deeper ideas and concepts, I've changed my view of time due to Leto and changed my perspective on education and humanity due to the Bene Gesserit. I know it sounds pretentious, but it's not a teenage phase. I've been reading and rereading these books for over 15 years. I've drawn much wisdom from them, and they've helped me come to terms with many things humanity does to itself. From other books, I'm stuck with Thank Ye, Sigh from the Dark Tower series. No idea why. It'll roll out of my mouth once in a while, and I never even went past Wolves of the Calla. I have adopted the litany against fear from Dune. It helps with anxiety. Also, the Gunslinger's Catechism from the Dark Tower helps with focus. Finally, the Flame and the Void from the Wheel of Time is, sometimes, useful for not losing my temper. I don't think it's subconscious, but Francie Nolan from A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I first read it when I was 11, her age in the beginning of the book. We both had long, straight brown hair and loved to read. Although many of our life experiences were different, I felt like her and thought about some things the same way she did, including some of her teenage revelations regarding chemistry and hanging on to each moment. I still feel a connection to her and am happy that she shaped a part of my childhood and adolescence. Don't ever knowingly or unknowingly adopted any belief or internal responses. When I do read a sad book, it puts me in a generally more introverted and depressive mode. But that's not about an individual character. How do you know you don't unknowingly adopt character traits from fiction? Think somebody would have caught up on that or myself at some point. I catch myself sometimes when I use phrases or mannerisms from colleagues or friends after spending a longer amount of time with them. In literature, it would have to be any main character in the book I am reading. Currently, that would be Vlad Toltos, created by Stephen Brust. In a binge-worthy TV show, Sean Spencer, Psych. You know that's right. I love Psych. A lot of my humor comes from that show as well as Clone High. Unfortunately, roughly 0 people understand it. I really hope not. Just finished the Nevernight series, and though Mia can be very loving and caring, she also wants to kill. I'm halfway through Darkton and ready to step into some shadows. That only happens with characters we can relate to for one reason or another. We don't adopt behavior patterns etc., contrary to our nature. Me? Sure. But not telling. Harry Dresden. He does the right thing and works hard even though getting beaten down constantly by circumstances often outside of his control. I don't really go through much suffering outside of typical parenting challenges, a challenging career, and there not being enough hours in the day to get things done, but I do like to think that because of the Dresden Files I've adopted. And I'm going to try to get through anything in life with discipline and humor attitude. I empathize with most of them. I felt quite disgusted with myself reading Lolita as well as Crime and Punishment because I empathized with people that were committing heinous crimes. I suppose one could argue that people who commit atrocities aren't always monsters and that they generally can't help themselves. poverty, biology, cycle of abuse etc., but then I find myself questioning my own morality and wondering if I am a monster in someone else's novel. I find myself drinking more tea when I read Jane Austen, and I went on a trip with a lot of walking shortly after finishing Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. I found myself feeling like all the walking were the boring parts on some epic quest, and then I would kind of laugh at myself for being silly. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo is written entirely in verse. An entire novel written in poems. The protagonist is a young woman and told from her perspective. I was so into the story and the way it was being told that for days after I finished it, I kept thinking in verse, and it got me to put some poems to paper. It was an immersive reading experience for me and one of my favorite reads of this year. I recommend it. After reading the Aubrey or Maturin series by Patrick O'Brian, Master and Commander, I find myself talking and thinking in 19th century English. It's such a pleasant sound and makes me think of a more polite society. That series massively extends your vocabulary. The only problem is, when you want to use words like sub-fusk and realize nobody would know what the F you were on about. Beautiful books though. I like to bring photic shrouds into conversation every now and again, and I believe I have referred to some persons as scrubs. Not a character, but I'm a big fan of the Harry Potter series, and after taking the Pottermore House sorting test, I was sorted into Hufflepuff. At first, I was very disappointed, however, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I definitely fit the traits. It was like something snapped and I went into full Hufflepuff mode. I owned it and wore that badge proudly. It's starting to die down a bit, but I was living my life like Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff was my identity. Probably not healthy to live like that, but hey, there are worse ways of living. I got myself out of a toxic friend group when reading the Dark Tower novels. Those people didn't share my values, and I was trying to be someone I didn't like to fit in. Mostly for fear of being alone. Kept on thinking I've forgotten the face of my father. Went off to find a way of living that was less fearful and more self-reliant. There you have it. Fictional characters imitated by our book's members subconsciously. Note: any book mentioned throughout the video can be accessed through the link on the description below. Thank you for watching till the end. Before you leave, do me a huge favor and remember to subscribe to I Love Reading if you have not already. Lastly, press the bell icon to get notified immediately I release new content. See you on the next video.